is Barbara Atim Okeni. Today I'll be reciting a speech that I wrote called Liberation. Juneteenth is a day to celebrate freedom, liberation, emancipation. Freedom, the emancipation of our ancestors, previously shackled, brutalized, tormented. The perceived abolition of enslavement only to be perpetuated by the 13th Amendment. Our current incarceration is present within our criminal system. The shackles are still present within the confines of jail cells. As a people, the Constitution and the systems within this country try to disrupt our freedom. Yet we are told we are free. Liberation, the rejuvenation of a people, a collective of resilient people. Our ancestors endured enslavement, the historical trauma passed down from generation to generation, the intergenerational trauma carried by the descendants of the enslaved. Trauma takes hold of our bodies, our minds, our spirits. We're not truly liberated until there's a true decolonization and rejuvenation. Colonization disrupted our safety, our culture, tried to take our indigenous practices and way of being. Perpetuates and maintains the binary, heteronormative, racist, ableist, capitalist, patriarchal ideals ingrained within every society. At the intersection of our identities, our experiences within these systems, subjected to the isms, compounds our intergenerational trauma. The cyclical nature of brutality, oppression, and lynching is both exhausting and traumatic. Dr. Joy DeGruy detailed the psychological effects of slavery on people of color and post-traumatic slave syndrome, America's legacy of enduring injury and healing. This term was utilized to provide a name for the systemic and intergenerational trauma caused by the slave trade, abuse, rape, and lynching at the hands of slave masters. This trauma is not only carried by our elders, but was passed on from generation to generation. Within every generation, there is an Emmett Till, Rodney King, and Trayvon Martin. Each death has caused a significant amount of anger, rage, and sadness, and mobilized our community to fight for justice. Yet we continue to persist. Liberation and progressive radical change have served as a catalyst for racial justice progress. Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the inception of the Black Panther Party and Black Lives Matter movement have worked to dismantle historical and systemic racism. The Black Panther Party, founded by college students Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, created programs intended to address systemic inequalities, including food insecurity, police brutality, and community violence. Informed by the teachings of Malcolm X, promoting Black power, Black wealth, and Black equality, the Black Panther Party revolutionized the social justice movement. The Black Lives Matter movement actively works to rectify the systemic oppression and brutality faced by people of color. For our children. The Black Child's Pledge, developed by Shirley Williams of the Black Panther Party. I pledge allegiance to my Black people. I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people in their struggle for liberation. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances which weaken me and make me less capable of protecting myself, my family, and my Black brothers and sisters. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with them in order to bring about change more quickly. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively rather than wasting them in idle hatred. I will train myself never to hurt or allow others to harm my Black brothers and sisters, for I recognize that we need every Black man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles I pledge to practice daily and to teach them to others in order to unite my people. Our people are resilient. I see this resilience in Black culture, excellence, and joy. Our culture, soul, music, art, and food. Our excellence, strengths, and achievements. Our joy, our ability to still find joy.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Adetutu Ajibase and I am part of William James College graduating class of 2021. Thanks for having me. It is a pleasure to be here and to share a spoken word that aims to highlight aspects of past and current events. It is my hope that this poem celebrates Juneteenth and Black history in its entirety. This poem was written to celebrate an evening of gratitude, hope, and reflection, and to commemorate our past and fallen heroes. It is entitled "Toward the Light." I hope you enjoy it. In this cave, darkness embraced us. Like a knee to a neck, panic submerged us, leaving solemn thoughts, questions. How did we get here? Invoking oral traditions and vivid recollections of how some crossed borders, crawled on four limbs through deserts to find bats and waters in this cave. Because the promise of water in darkness was better than drought. The promise of trying was better than the fear of falling or drowning. Survival. Stories of violence, of some being haunted from primitive lands, chained and abused, to be thrown in this cave. Some born here, indigents, but lost like the rest of us. In this cave, we bargained, begged to find a path that would lead to light. We tried, we cried to be rescued by our oppressors. Like you, reaching for a registration, and he reaches for a gun. Like you, yelling, please don't shoot, and he says, you made me do it. We bargained to return liberty to its statue. Scrubbed floors our ancestors built. Race children recycled to oppress us. We hurt. Pain beyond the physical. We hurt. The burden of a sunken heart and the strength of a warrior. We dared to hope. And on the 16th, rays of light shone through openings too high to reach. Illusions of emancipation proclaimed. Yet we dared to dream of liberation, of light outside this darkness, of a nation where rebel flags are lowered. Like King, we dared to dream of a nation where Black men become the voice of his nation. James Baldwin. Where a Black girl grows to be the sole congresswoman. Shirley Chisholm. And another, a billionaire activist, Madam C.J. Walker. Oprah. We dared to dream of literature. Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston. We dared to dream of using our voices to speak up like Jesse Jackson, Malcolm X. We moved heavy rocks along the way in this cave, found small openings to take in oxygen, and sacred places to bury bones. In this cave, we journeyed, hit roadblocks, and on the 44th, we saw it, an opening in the distance. A light shone through at the end of the tunnel, and we released a breath of gratitude as we pressed on. Determination replaced fatigue, hope restored, promises of unity, of life filled with sunlight and equality. We ran until the 45th. Tsunamis, hurricanes, pandemics shook this cave, blocking the once cleared exit. It was like pouring water in a basket, emptiness, a hit and run, hopelessness, crashing waves, anger, and the scorch set in. While in this cave, darkness embraced us. Like a python to its prey, it forced us to respond, find means to survive, to breathe. In this cave, darkness served its purpose. Cunningly, it led us to light, unveiled truths like those the insurrection unmasked. Darkness served its purpose. Like raindrops exposes buried rocks, darkness unveiled privilege and told us that those they call darkness, those with melanin shades from ebony to mocha, cocoa to honey, from almond to espresso, could not storm the Capitol and be free to speak. Those with skin that glistens in the sun and glows in the moonlight could not storm the Capitol and live to breathe. In this cave, we met validation. We voted and lived to see the 46th. A new dawn, resurgence of positive energy, to move rocks of blockage, of Muslim ban, racist constructions of border walls, rocks of mass incarcerations, to move to move enough rocks to reborn democracy, to re, to create an opening wide enough to exit. So here we are on the other side, finally feeling the sun against our skins, taking a moment of gratitude, yet remembering the big rocks that were too heavy to move, rocks of racism, hate, poverty, inequality, and police brutality still exist. In this moment, mindfulness wins. But in this moment, mindfulness wins, reflection wins, gratitude wins. On the other side of this cave, we celebrate a victory, the presence of light. Thank you.
What are your thoughts on how far, did we actually come anywhere? Did we, like, I'm stuck because been watching some of the old shows, and I'm like, some of the things that they were talking about, some of the things that were happening, it's almost like we're repeating that same thing again. And as much as our parents, say, oh, things are getting better, or we hear things are getting better, are they really? Like, these things make me question.
I can understand and appreciate that. I was actually thinking this morning, because I knew I was going to do this call. I was thinking about Juneteenth, and I was thinking about that day in 1865 and what it might have been like for the enslaved people to hear this message out of nowhere, really, from sailors on a boat, that you are free, you are now free. And I kept thinking, if you have lived your entire life in bondage, if your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents have also lived their entire lives in bondage, and bondage was all you knew, but you had a hope of freedom deep inside, but bondage was your reality, what would that message mean to you? To have somebody, some stranger, say, you're free. And the stranger looks exactly like the people who have enslaved you and your ancestors. What might that feel like? And I've been reflecting on that and thinking how much courage it took for those formerly enslaved people to take a step into freedom and into the ultimate unknown. Because freedom was completely unknown to these people. What might they have felt when they went home to their families and said, some white man said we were free? What does that mean? What does it mean for us? Because I think that to me is where I started, is where I landed this year. What does freedom mean? And thinking about the events of the past year and a half, between the pandemic and what's been going on in the country politically, and we've been hearing shouts of freedom, I'm free, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm free, I'm going to storm the Capitol building. I'm free, I'm going to carry arms into the state house of Michigan. I'm free. We've been hearing these shouts of freedom from people whose expressed wish in their freedom is to oppress mine. So what does freedom mean? And how do we know when we got it? Will we ever know for sure if we have it? And as I thought about if I could put myself on the shores of Galveston Bay listening to this message and not trusting it, not trusting that I could be free, not trusting that they meant it when they said I was free. I think about that process that each and every one of those enslaved people had to go through of threading their way between fear, reality, and hope. Where we are now is not where we were when I was growing up. It's not where we were when I was a young adult. It's not where my parents were when they were young adults. I had the privilege of knowing my grandfather who was born in 1870. 1870, my grandfather was born. He lived through Reconstruction. We are not where he was. But one of the things I think that's true and goes to your question, Sonia, is that the themes keep repeating themselves. So as I think of, I have visualized, because I'm a very visual person, I've visualized this process as like a spiral that goes ever upward, but it spirals. And leaning against the spiral are these themes. What does freedom mean? Who gets to be free? How much freedom do we get? And what do we have to do to earn it? And where do we find the courage to earn it? And so these themes are resting against this spiral. So each time we go around, we touch these themes again. And we go up, but we touch these themes again. And we go up, but we touch these themes again. And I think that helps me understand why it sometimes seems like we're fighting the same old fight all over again, and that we've made no progress. We are fighting the same old fight. We're fighting exactly the same fight that those formerly enslaved people fought when they stood on the beach in Galveston and asked themselves, can I trust this? Am I really free? You know, over the past year, I watched as the protests erupted following the death of George Floyd and others. And for the first time in my life, I saw enormous numbers of white people turn out to protest. That was new. That was different. We've never seen that before. So that's what I mean by we're making progress. That white people, Latinx people, Asian people, all kinds of people are seeing their freedom in ours. And they are walking beside us now in a way they did not in my generation. When we were protesting, that was not happening. I see people from around the globe. When this summer, when the protest erupted, there were protests in every major city around the world. When has the world ever cared about the freedom of Black people in the US? That's a first. That's never happened. So we're fighting the same old fight. The rate of murders of Black people by officers of the law are still way too high. But for the first time, officers are being tried. Not consistently and not always, but the fact that they're being tried at all, that's never happened.
Do you think it's because of the different platforms that we now have and people are no longer to do these things in private or undercover?
I think that has a lot to do with it because in my experience, because I've also had brutal run-ins with policemen, and my experience was when I would share those stories with my white neighbors and colleagues, they literally could not believe them. It wasn't that they did not want to believe them, they could not believe them. It was too far from their own lived experience. They could not even imagine a police officer walking up to them and just slamming them against the wall for no reason. They could not imagine that that could happen. And so for them, the very idea that these things could happen was like saying, oh, a Martian landed in my backyard last night. Come have lunch with him. Now, people are more able to entertain the possibility that it could happen. Our workplaces are integrated in a way that they've never been before. So most white people still, their contact with Black people is through the workplace because our neighborhoods and communities remain segregated for the large part. And so in the workplace, they begin to hear murmurings of these stories. They begin to meet you and I, Sonia, for example. and get to know us and know that, well, she probably wouldn't make up something like that. So I might have to stretch my mind a bit. But now we have this technology. Everybody's walking around with a camera in their hand. And I'm so very grateful to Darnella Frazier. I don't know if you know that name. She's the young 17-year-old who stood on the curb and filmed George Floyd's death.
And she was recognized for that.
Yeah, she just was recognized, and gratefully so, because she has gone through hell since she published that video. So have we made progress? Yes, Darnella Frazier felt empowered and emboldened to stand and stand strong. But whites who hated what they showed her, what she showed them, have harassed her ever since. She's gotten death threats. She's been harassed. She's been threatened with assault. So no, we haven't made progress there, but it's a spiral. We're always moving upward. And it helps me stand strong when the same things happen again and again. But now the response is different. So on top of all of that, then we have the pandemic, this deadly disease, absolutely terrifying disease that has been sweeping around the globe and has killed 600,000 American citizens. And we have people who refuse to believe it. Just as they, a generation ago, refused to believe that police officers could behave with such brutality, now they're refusing to believe that this pandemic is real, that this flu can kill and is killing. They don't want to believe it. Why? Because it's too far from their experience. They've never seen anything like this. They've never known anything like this. And they've literally never spoken to anyone who lived through the last big pandemic. So I think that part of what we see over and over again is a reaction to change. Some people are excited by change, are thrilled by change, are willing to risk themselves, their safety, their comfort for change. Other people are very resistant to change. We call them traditionalists. They want everything to stay as it was. And when the earth rumbles and shakes and change comes, they feel incredibly unsafe. And they simply freeze. And they want everyone and everything around them to freeze too. And we're seeing that in the responses to this pandemic. We're seeing, I saw on the news the other night, people protesting at a vaccination site, going in with signs trying to disrupt the vaccination. If I'm scared to get this vaccination, you should not get it either. And I will do everything I can to stand in your way. Well, if I go back to those people standing on the beach at Galveston, I'm betting that there were some formerly enslaved Black people standing there saying, don't believe it, don't trust it, go back and obey your master. I'm sure there must have been those voices. So freedom is a moving target, always. What it looks like changes and should change from generation to generation, from place to place. And have we made progress? Yes. There's no doubt in my mind that we've made progress. But the progress is slow. Cultures change slowly. And as someone who studied cultural change, I can attest to that. Cultural change is slow. And what typically happens is we race forward 6 inches and we snap back 4. And we race forward 6 more and snap back 3. But that's human progress. And I don't think that's going to change. We're not going to arrive at equity, equality, and justice in a straight line. It's always been a jagged line. It's always been stop and go. And to me, what's critical is that we find the courage that those enslaved people found on Galveston Beach, the courage to believe, the courage to trust in our own agency, the courage and willingness to step out of what's safe and known and step into the unknown and take those that we love with us, to educate them, talk to them, coax them, cajole them, love them, and even love them when their feet are stuck in the mud and they're not budging. It's been a very difficult year. And I'm predicting for you young people, we have a difficult decade ahead of us because we've made progress, because we've gone so far, because we have fought so hard, that in this next decade, my prediction is that all of the people who are traditionalists, who want things to be just like they always were back in the good old days, are raising their hands and voices. And it's going to be up to us to fight back with love. If we allow hatred to take our souls, we will be no better than they are. We have to fight back while holding on to love and holding on to hope. Forgiveness. I can't tell you how many out and out racists I've known in my life who will look me dead in the eye and say, you don't belong here. I have to find a way to forgive them. Not because I love them all that much, but because it frees me. If I hold on to rage and hatred and fear, I stay stuck. And they can continue to dance wherever they want to dance. I don't choose to stay stuck. I choose to dance.